Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I figured we'd take a trip down memory lane and remember the things that we lost. I've got a list of what I believe to be the 3 worst nerfs in Destiny 2 history that had a severely negative impact on PvP for all classes. I've got one for Titans, I got one for Hunters, got one for Warlocks, nerfs that hit really close to home for me. And if it was up to me, we would revert these nerfs yesterday so that we could get back to having some serious fun in PvP again. The gameplay in the video comes from videos I've posted years ago when the meta was totally different, so hopefully you enjoy that nostalgic sandbox as well. And with that, let's get into the first nerf that really, truly sucked. Kicking things off with Titans, let's talk about sunspots. Before Solar 3.0 dropped, things looked really different for Sunbreakers. Our skill trees were divided up into a few options, one of which was a set tree called the Siegebreaker. Now, this was the least popular of the 3 at the time. Hammer bonking with Burning Maul was meta in PvE. For huge melee stacks you could generate to take down like Riven solo. The other Hammer of Soul Tree offered bigger explosions and better hit registration on the super, as well as a shoulder charge option. But Siegebreaker was different. Siegebreaker was all about generating sunspots and then queuing up a really interesting gameplay loop. If you defeated an enemy with a solar ability, or if you killed them while they were under the effects of a burn damage over time effect, then you would leave a sunspot behind at the location of their death. That sunspot had several applications. The first was that it granted a buff called Sun Warrior. This buff no longer exists in the game, it's gone. If you ran to the location where you secured the kill and stood in your sunspot that you created, you would be granted several seconds of Sun Warrior. This was a small damage buff to your weapon damage and made kill chaining an option. If you got a kill while the Sun Warrior buff was active, you would create a second sunspot and then a third. And you basically had this playstyle that was all about running and gunning. Keep pushing, don't slow down. And there was an emphasis on using your weapon to secure kills to keep that streak alive. The other cool thing about sunspots is that they did serious damage to enemies who walked into them. They do not anymore. They do reduced amount of damage and slower ticks, so it's not nearly as dangerous as it used to be. It was basically a pool of lava on the ground, and if someone died in your sunspot, they would then create a new sunspot to keep the floor is lava loop going, right? That doesn't happen anymore. This was also a super fun way to do ad control in PvE, by the way, so this nerf hit the PvE enthusiasts as well. But Bungie basically neutered sunspots with Solar 3.0. They brought Laurel's Splendor into the game, which, would have made sunspots OP in their current form, so instead of, reworking Laurel before shipping it, they just decided to completely nerf sunspots into the ground, and then they just nerfed Laurel anyway a couple weeks later. So sunspots were no longer about kill chaining, they were about healing and regeneration. So sunspots used to be about getting a damage buff, burning enemies who walked through them, and then keeping the aggression going. Now, they're simply a supply depot where you go and stand in it to get some health and ability energy. No longer are you moving forward, you are sitting still. It's like a hot tub you jump into to take a little time out in the middle of a match. PvP is always better when there's a focus on moving forward, staying aggressive, and using weapons. Fast forward to where we are today with endless ability spam, baiting corners with fake radar pings, and area of denial abilities to keep gunfights from happening in the first place. All this to say, take me back to when sunspots made Titans challenge me to duels instead of standing behind their walls and chaining overshields. Stagnant gameplay is boring. Dynamic gameplay is exciting. Please, unnerf sunspots and let us burn the world again. Solar Titan usage percentages in PvP are way down to a whopping 1% this week. One Solar Titan out of every 100 players. It's dead. Let's move on. Next up, we got the Hunters. And this one might get a little pushback, we'll see. But when you compare the prismatic ability spam hellscape that we have right now, compared to what we used to have be the meta, I'll take what used to be meta 10 out of 10 times. It used to be that Hunters could jump really high. Yeah, that's it. The community grabbed their pitchforks and torches and took to the streets complaining that Hunters were jumping too dang high in PvP and it needed to freaking stop. I'm talking, of course, about Stompies, and I'm being a little bit reductive. I'm not blind to the fact that Stompies were the #1 pick for literally years for Hunter mains. I'm aware of that. New exotics would come out and no one would use them because stompies simply existed. But that hunter meta was just hunters sliding further, sprinting faster, and jumping higher. And I know it can be tricky to track hunter movement in real time with all of those movement buffs, but at the end of the day, the stompy hunter still needed to land their primary weapon shots in order to capitalize on that movement. Movement doesn't kill enemies. Movement makes it harder for enemies to shoot you. But if you're going to secure the kill as a stompy hunter, you still need to hit your shots. And that's why you never once heard me campaign for a stompy nerf in PvP. I just didn't do it. The issue to me is that now we have this hunter meta that is 100% defined by ability usage. And those abilities are a direct replacement for gun skill and landing shots. You don't need to land as many shots, and you definitely don't need to land precision hits. If your swarm grenades are catching enemies inside smoke grenades and then threadlings are pouncing on them too while they can't move. The loop is all about ability usage, ability uptime, and ability placement. It's not about winning weapon duels. If you asked me which I preferred, between a hunter that's a kitty cat jumping from tree to tree on Nibbly Bibbly or prismatic ability spam, I will take the kitty cat every single time. The stompy nerf took away airborne accuracy, which made it less about gunplay than it was before, and that forced a shift away from weapon dueling and forced an emphasis on ability spam exotics, and that to me is a trade-off that I won't take if given the choice. And that's why the stompy nerf makes the list for me. TV, why didn't you show any stompy gameplay? Simple, because I didn't use them. I preferred other builds, and that also means I'm not a stompy crutcher who's just trying to defend the thing that he used to use. I didn't use them. Moving on. The last nerf was one that targeted my beloved main subclass, so take it with a grain of salt. Admittedly, this one hits close to home, so if you think I'm out of pocket here, then feel free to say something. It won't change my mind, but it will increase the number of comments on the video, therefore boosting engagement and making the video perform better, so I'm encouraging you to speak up purely out of selfish reasons. Just thought I'd clear that up, but the nerf I'm talking about is, of course, the absolute destruction of Devour on Voidwalkers. When Bungie was pitching Prismatic to us, they noted that the goal was to provide the means of reaching into the kits of every available subclass without taking the things that made them the most powerful. That way, we could be the jack of all trades, but if we wanted to be the master of one specifically, if we wanted to be the master of Void, we would still want to stick with the Void subclass alone. Fast forward to today, where the easiest way to activate Devour is not within the Voidwalker kit. It's by using abilities outside of the Void tree, and keeping Devour up is by using abilities outside of the Void tree, and Devour now feeds a number of other things like granting massive cooldown buffs to your class ability due to prismatic fragments. If you want to make the most out of the best things Voidwalker has to offer, you don't play Voidwalker, and that is the problem. I'm not saying the Devour loop on Prismatic is OP and needs tuned down. I'm saying that Devour on Voidwalker got nerfed into the freaking ground, leaving Prismatic the only logical place to leverage it anymore. So what did they do specifically to Devour? Well, there are two main nerfs that happened here. Let's break them down. The first thing they did was strip away the Voidwalker's ability to consume their own grenade and sacrifice the ability charge in order to activate Devour. This was inherent to the Devour tree. This was just something Voidwalkers could do. Didn't require an exotic or anything like that. We could sacrifice our grenade ability and instead eat that grenade to give us full health. There was a casting animation. It wasn't instantaneous, so you couldn't abuse it in the middle of a firefight. And there was even a half-second delay between the consumption and the restoration of your health, so you couldn't just do it in the open in the middle of a gunfight. You'd have to break line of sight, go find cover, go through the process of consuming the grenade if you wanted to get that health back, and hope that the other guy didn't push you while you were doing the animation. But Bungie said, no more. With Void 3.0, they stripped away the ability to activate Devour by consuming your grenade. Instead, you had to get an ability Final Blow in order to queue it up. And Voidwalker abilities were not all that great at securing Final Blows. They were more about priming targets, applying weakening, and suppressing debuffs. The other option was a new exotic armor piece called the Secant Filaments that would grant you Devour when casting your Empowering Rift. So this is worse in every way, by the way. First, it takes away your freedom to use various exotics. We used to be able to consume our grenade and get Devour on command without having to use a specific exotic to do it. Second, the grenade consumption wasn't a stationary thing. It had a faster cast time than a rift, And the Rift makes you stand still on flat ground to cast it, while the grenade consumption that we used to be able to do could be done while walking, strafing, gliding through the air, etc. So this is worse in every way, shape, and form. The second nerf was that they cut the uptime to Devour in half, giving you far less time to chain it than before. This killed its potency in PvP because now you barely have time to reload your weapon before the buff disappears. So good freaking luck reloading your weapon and then finding another engagement in, 3 seconds. It's not happening. This basically killed the chaining potential of Devour in PvP. It remains a good option in PvE because of, the ad density and the ability to extend that timer to a longer duration on multiple refreshes. But in PvP, it's basically done and over with. Not to mention, if you want to use Devour, you basically have to sacrifice an aspect slot to get the most mileage out of it now. This week, the usage rate for Voidwalker is down to 2.3%. Cooked, dead, gone, a relic of the ancient past. It's time to revert the changes. And there you have it. Those are the 3 worst nerfs in Destiny PvP history to me personally. Let me know down below in the comments section which nerfs would make your list and what you think I might have missed. Hopefully there will come a time when Bungie is able to restore some of these things and take us back to a sandbox where aggression, primary weapon emphasis, and movement mastery are the key elements to success instead of ability usage and stagnant gameplay. Thanks so much for watching the video today. Feel free to leave a like on it if you enjoyed it and subscribe for additional whining and complaining content from Destiny's most annoying dad. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.